Hi, this is the voice explainer. Today I will be explaining the movie named Stonehearst Asylum. The story is set in an old mental asylum in England, built in 18s. It was a large isolated place far from towns or cities and covered in snow during winter. Despite the location, people still came there for treatment. One winter, a doctor named Edward from Oxford University arrived at the asylum. He came to study mental illness more deeply. When he arrived, he met a rude man named Finn and his group, who seemed unhappy about his visit. Still, they let him in. Edward then met a head of the asylum, Dr. Silas Lamb. Dr. Lamb said they hadn't received any letter about Edward's visit, maybe because of bad weather. He questioned why Edward came all the way there instead of visiting the closer asylum near his home. Edward replied that he wanted to study serious mental health cases and hoped to learn something valuable. Dr. Lamb agreed to let Edward stay. That day, Edward saw some of the patients, including a 13-year-old woman named Elida. She didn't seem insane, she was even playing the piano, but she had a disorder called hysteria, which causes her to freeze when touched in certain places. Her backstory was that she had cut off her husband's ear, which led to her being admitted. Edward noticed that this asylum was different from others. The patients were treated more kindly. They weren't locked up or tortured with electric shocks or cold showers. They could walk freely and even ate meals with the doctors. Edward found this strange but thought it might be a new treatment method. During dinner, Edward and Finn got into an argument. Dr. Lamb got angry and told Finn to apologize. Finn did so and offered Edward a drink. Edward was about to drink it, but Eliza warned him not to. Later, she met Edward privately and told him he would have left the asylum soon because he didn't know what was really going on there. Eliza also tells Edward to leave his luggage behind so no one suspects his leaving, but Edward says he just arrived, so he can't do that. He asks her what really going on in the asylum, but she doesn't tell him. Edward starts to feel something is wrong. He spends the whole night thinking about it and feels unsafe, so he keeps a pistol with him. Even though he feels in danger, he stays because he wants to find out the truth. He hears strange noises at night and goes to check. Following the sound, he ends up in the basement. There he finds a group of people locked up. At first they seem insane, but when he talks to them, he realizes they are actually the real doctors, nurses and staff of the asylum, even a famous doctor named Benjamin Salt. Edward is shocked. If the real staff is locked up, then who's running the asylum? It turns out that people running the place, including Silas and the others, are actually mentally ill patients. They think they are doctors and nurses, but they are not. Edward doesn't know what to do believe and feels confused. Dr. Salt explains everything. He says they did get Edward letter a week ago. He shares the asylum story. Silas originally built the asylum, but after a war, he went mad. He was admitted as a patient, but his condition was hard to understand. He began controlling others with his madness. The doctor tried everything to cure him but failed. Eventually, Silas killed 4 doctors and locked up the rest of the staff without food or water. Now Edward realizes he is in serious trouble. He decided to go to Eliza and tell her everything. He begs her to escape with him, but Eliza refuses. She reveals that she is also patient and wants him again. It's too late now and he is trapped like the rest of them. Still, Edward doesn't want to live without her. Meanwhile, the real doctors hope Edward will help them. Edward had 2 choices, either escape or bring help, or free the doctors himself. Both options are dangerous. He decided to act smartly. He pretends he doesn't know anything and acts like a regular doctor so that no one gets suspicious. Silas, the fake head doctor, trusts Edward and thinks he can help run the asylum. Secretly, Edward starts helping the real doctors by giving them food and water. He also asks Dr. Salt about Silas' mental condition, hoping that if he understands Silas' illness, he might solve the whole problem, but the fake doctors had destroyed all records. Now it's clear why Edward came here, to study real mental disorders. disorders. And from the beginning of the movie, Eliza is shown as the patients being treated by the fake doctor like an experiment. There was also a class held in the asylum while Edward was there. When Edward saw Eliza, he started to like her. In fact, Eliza was the real reason he came to the asylum. He wanted to free her. Later, two doctors tried to escape but were killed by Finn, a violent patient who had already murdered people before. That's why he was in the asylum. The fake doctors began to feel unsafe because winter was ending and visitors would soon start coming, which might expose their secret. Silas then used electric shock therapy on Dr. Salt to erase his memory. Edward helped because he was afraid they might do the same to him if he refused. He decided to escape on New Year's Eve. One night Edward put drugs in everyone's drink to knock them out, but Finn saw him and tried to stop him. They fought and Edward injured him. He tried to give the drinks to others but failed because Silas figured out what he was doing. Then Edward was also given electric shock therapy just like Dr. Salt. The goal was to erase his memory and make him insane, but Edward had learned a lot about Silas, including his strengths and weaknesses. Just before the shock, Edward asked for one last wish, to look at the photo from his pocket. When the doctor gave him the photo, it brought back all his memories. The photo reminded Silas of terrible past events. Silas had once been a real doctor during the war. He treated many wounded people who screamed in pain, and it started to affect his mind. He ended up killing many of them, including a young boy, which he deeply regretted. Afterward, he came to the asylum and imagined a new world where he was the doctor again, helping people. Silas believed a real doctor didn't treat patients kindly, so he thought he was doing better job, even though he wasn't. Later, Finn tried to kill Edward again, but was killed by electric shock. The shock caused by a fire to break out in the asylum. Edward rescued the trapped doctors and helped Eliza escape too. But then something surprising happened. Another man walked in claiming to be Dr. Edward. All the doctors were shocked and asked, if you are the real Dr. Edward, then who was the man pretending to be you? It turned out that the Edward who helped them was actually a patient, not a doctor. He had stolen the real doctor's identity. He had fallen in love with Eliza the first time he saw her and stayed in the asylum to be close to her. Because he was also mentally ill, he blended in with the other patients. Insane people can understand one another. In the end, the same disturbed man who pretends to be the doctor left with Eliza. Despite it all, they start a life together, seemingly happy. Thank you for watching.